Good afternoon. Thank you all. Thank you all for coming. It is a privilege and honor on behalf of the Center of Monetary Leadership to present a session with Rabbi Nachman Levine. As you know, the fellows know that in previous sessions I've said that we're very machmir on Nitzvat Shulchan B'fanav. So usually I don't introduce speakers, but I will say two things about Rabbi Levine. A is, I'll just quote what one of the fellows said to me after his presentation this morning, which was, when you said that he would totally transform the way in which we read, I said, he's probably just really very good, that's what he means, but you're right. He totally transforms the way, totally transforms the way I read. Secondly, I would say there really are very, very few times in the world when walking out of a lecture, my instinct is, wow, I have to teach that to somebody. And that is the regular feeling I get whenever I listen to Rabbi Levine, that not just, well, I learned that, but wow, I just have to go teach that to somebody. I spent this morning just constructing 3 or 4 different public lectures I had to give just off that chair. So with that, I look forward to having many more lectures after this.
All right. Okay, y'all got the cheat sheets and stuff? All right. All right, let me, as I understand, this section is supposed to be about Midrash as opposed to Agadah, right? Something like that? Okay. So explain to you kind of what I will be doing. I'm not going to explain to you how Midrash works, but let's learn some Midrash and see how it works. So I got to tell you like this. My family, we have a family business. I teach classes at Beit in Detroit. My wife teaches high school classes at Beit in Detroit. And my son and my daughter-in-law teach at Beit in Muncie. And the family business is whenever we come up with a really wild methodology, so we try it out on each other and we see which way it can be done. So we came up with this idea, and everybody went in a different direction. And it's a good way to fit in some of the things I'll be doing in Midrash. And that was, we thought of the idea of we're reading, let's say, the Parsha of the Mialdas, Shmos. In general, the idea of the Nachash. So simply, for general framework, where is, what is the idea of the Nachash, or the snake, or the Tanin? What does it mean in terms of the Egyptian iconography? We have a nice picture on the back. Cobra. What does it mean to Jewish people, Bnei Israel, Mitzrayim? What does it mean to the reader? The reader, presumably, it's been Chamash L'Mekra that already learned Sefer Bereshis. He remembers everything, right? And the larger question, which we, and I imagine Rabbi Clapper would frame it this way: what about the role of the reader who wants to read, what does it mean in the text if I would read the perspective of the Egyptians and the Jews and of the reader, okay? So in other words, how would all those things work together? So we tried it out, and we were, basically what we were doing, we were reading the Egyptian iconography, okay, the significance of the cobra and the staff, against the Midrashim, and seeing which way that they were going, right? Part of my wife's methodology was when she was teaching at Beis Yankov, when she started to introduce the Parsha of the Mialdas, so she reached into her school bag and took out this big, huge rubber snake and threw it out, and they all started screeching, and then they were able to start the Mialdas. Got their attention. All right, so I have to tell you is, classically, generally when I would be teaching Midrash, I would say the only rational, reasonable question that you could ask a Midrash is, what's it doing and what's it saying? Right? You can't ask a question like how do you know that? That's not a tenable question. If Rashi makes the claim, so then it's a rational question, and you say, well, how do you know that? You know, you show me the money. You can't ask that question to a Midrash because the Midrash never made that claim. All you could ask is, textually, what's it doing? Right? And I used to say what's more important is what's it saying. but I'm going through a period right now. I'm very, very heavily influenced by Yeshua Levinson. Okay, so remember the homework I gave you for this morning? Read everything by Yonah Frankel, read everything by Rav Wolfson. Okay, read everything that you can by Yeshua Levinson, which is basically one book, Hasipur Shelo Supar. Okay, and I'm very much getting the sense that the question of what the Midrash is doing is an extremely important part of what the Midrash is saying. So his thing, we're going to see, largely has to do with the role of the reader, the role of the Midrash filling in gaps in the text. So we're used to thinking, okay, there's gaps in the text, and the Midrash fills up the gaps. What do I do now that I read the Midrash when I go back and read the chapter? I think that I'm getting that very, very much from Yeshua Levinson. And now, when I once did the Midrash thing, when I did it, when I presented one thing, a different thing about the Makala, I made the statement that the Yemei Yunin in Tanakh, I think it's illegal in several states to bring midrashim. You only can bring the pshat. So I made the statement that it is perilous to confuse pshat with Rash. It is tipshus to ignore what the Midrash noticed about the text. Okay, so it can have its own solution to a gap, but then by the time you read the Midrash, like, oh my gosh, like, why didn't I notice that in the pshat? How does that affect now how I should go back and read the pshat? Does that kind of make sense? Yeah, sure. Okay, so I'm going to simplify that in terms of our reading as the reader, for our purposes, Egyptian iconography, what the Miyaldas narrative and what the miracle and the sign and the oz and the motifs of the Nochash and Tanim means to the Jewish people, and what it means to the reader that might be aware of all this stuff. Basically, what I'm going to go with the approach is, how does that, for our purposes, fix up Sefer Bereshis? Okay? That's the question I want to look at. So, what I'm going to do is simply I want to take a look at the text, and we start to look at the Midrashim. We start to notice the things in the text that we should have noticed. We may not go with the methodology of the Midrash, but by now we realize we have to go back and read it much more carefully. Okay? So I'll give you an example. I'll explain to you some of the technical terms that I'm going to be using. The reason I'm saying it like that is there's one of the exercises that I use when I'm trying to explain the idea of deliberate multivalence. There's ambiguity in the text. And I like both readings, right? So when I presented, it was a paper along these lines, a presentation. So I explained to them, I used all kinds of technical terms. So I did an exercise called tight sheets. So the first thing I want to find out is, do you know what tight sheets are? You don't know what tight sheets? Okay. Tight sheets is when you're the Rebbe in the Cheder, so you want to give out sheets to the kids to be able to teach the psukim, they'll be able to translate the psukim, right? So what happened was, I explained the difference between a synchronic and diachronic reading, what's the difference between syntagmatic multivalence. Okay, so explain to them, it turns out it was a cultural thing, they didn't know what tight sheets were. So the first thing you have to know is tight sheets is, you can teach the kids in the Cheder, you have to have a sheet, and you have to have the psukim to teach it. Well, what if there's two different ways to teach the pasuk? Okay, and you need both to understand the pasuk. You need the tension between the two translations. So that's an exercise they do called tight sheets. I'll show you what I mean. All right? Let's take a look at one of the texts. And starting from Shmos Aleph, where the trouble begins, you have it the Chumashim, Pasuk Ches, Vayokem El Chodesh, okay? Mitzrayim asher lo yodas Yosef v'yom el amo hine am b'nei Sorah v'atzum mimenu he hava nischak malo. This is what we're going to do. We're going to be nischak malo. Where below is pen yarbev v'yak yisrael milchama v'nosaf gamul sonenu. So these sarim yisim, okay, into position, and they go ahead and they go along with it, and they make everybody work hard, all right? And plan seems to work. We can do this hava nischak malo. All right, so direct your attention onto the sheets, I kind of had the same text in both places. I bolded some words in the first version, and I bolded some other versions, and I put Unglish's translation on the side next to that. Okay, you with me? All right. So plan works. They pick all the sarim, they make all the sarim nisim, they make the people work. Okay, there's a word pattern that you can see throughout the first section. What is it? Who's? What?
Egyptians.
The Egyptians. Okay, made whose life miserable? The guys. Okay, who made their lives miserable? The Egyptian guys. Okay? Okay, fine. Calls these mialdot, and he gives her the plan. Okay, and if it's a ben, so you get rid of the guy. They didn't do that. Okay, they had Yirav Elokim v'tachayena te'elatim, which Rashi points out doesn't mean simply that it's an active verb. They didn't, misapkot lehem mayim v'mazon. Doesn't mean simply that they passively allowed them to live. They actively caused them to live. Okay. Paro calls them in, okay. So they said, oh, you don't understand? They're a bunch of chayas, ki chayot hena. But before we get there, then the Mialed takes care of it. And then he comes up with the final plan, and it's the Kol Ben Yaloda Yirot Teshlechu V'Kol Bat Techayim. Okay. In the second section, I bolded Mialdot. Okay. Now, it happens to be, it's very nice that he called in the Mialdot. Happens to be, I don't know what the word Mialdot means. So I looked at Onkelos, and he tells me, what does Mialedet mean? He tells me it means, what? Chayata. Okay, a chaya. Like we have the halachas by Tisha B'Av. If someone's a chaya, okay, meaning she's a miyaledet, she's a midwife, so she's allowed to go wear shoes to wherever she has to go. And, okay, so it's in terms of miyaledet, it's a chaya. It's an Aramaic. Yep. Pasuk Yud Zayin to miyaldot. Okay, chayata. Okay. Karena makot lechayata. Yep. Sure enough, it's all the chayatas. Okay. Interesting. How does he translate ki chayot hayna? Translates it as they are chayot. Translates it as, you have the uncles over there? Chakima. They're smart. They're smart like a mialedet. Right? If you remember the Rashi, okay, Rashi brings, first one he brings they are chakimot, they're mialedet, they're smart as mialedet. The way you say mialedet in Aramaic is a chayt. So we say, okay, that's a really good answer, but how do you know the power new Aramaic, or did you read the uncles? Okay, be that way, fine. Brings another medrash. It says that they're nimshalu l'chayot. They're compared to the chayot by Yaakov, and they don't need a miyaledet, okay, because they're like chayot hasadeh. All right. By the way, all right, which one of them is true? First one, or the second one? All right. First one's a bold-faced lie. Okay. It is not the case, okay, that the kids are living, okay, because, well, by the time we got there, the miyaledet, so she's an Aramaic, the lady is a chaya, which is an Aramaic, and she already did the job. That's not true. That's a lie. Okay? The real truth is the midrash, okay, that they are nimshalu l'chayot hasadeh, and that's probably more to the point, okay, the first was a lie. Right? What?
Isn't the whole thing a lie either way?
What's that?
Isn't it a lie regardless?
Oh, yeah, but there's much more truth, okay, to the second one, and then Paul says, oh yeah, you're right, I remember by the Baruch of Yaakov, okay. There's ultimate universal truth in the second one that the first one is just total baloney. All right? But Onkelos translates Hakim. All right? And consider now there, and then finally, okay, he comes up with the final solution, which is called a ben yaroy, called a bat tichayu. All right? Then everything takes off from there. Okay. I see the word chaya, tichayun, okay, coming up a lot. Okay? And I see these ladies who are mechayeh, Moshe. That is the case, I would say, from the beginning until things turn around chiastically. All the people who are doing anything over there are ladies, right? You have Bat Levi, Bat Levi, you have Bat Paro, you have Benot Yitro. Okay, so they are constantly saving him, and they are drawing him from the water. Of course, he turns around and returns the favor. Okay, Ish mitzvah hitzi lanu v'gam dalo lanu mayim. Okay, so he saved us and he drew water for us. That's when things come full circle. The active ones clearly are the ladies. Okay, Adkan. I forgot to tell you, there was this very, very significant sign, the first sign that was shown to Moshe himself, in order to show to Bnei Israel, and is going to be the first sign that he's going to show to Paro, which is what? Was either the Nachash or the Tanin, the snake. Okay? What that means, in terms of the Egyptian iconography, so, the second side, okay, simply, the idea of the cobra, okay, is the divinity, protector of the Nile. It's your control over the Nile. It means you control the economy, you control the world economy, okay? And if you're a royal personage, so you have a cobra up there, which represents your control of the Nile. The staff is the most ancient symbols of pharaonic authority, and if you have the staff, that means you're the man in charge. So obviously, when you have in the Midrash, okay, or you have in the Psukim, that what it simply means, and the Midrash always picks it up, the pasuk right under there for Yechezkel, okay? He thinks he's a big snake, who is splashing around in his water, okay, and he says he's a self-made man, or he's a self-made snake. He controls everything. Simply, that's what it means. We control the Nile. Okay. It's no surprise that when Paro laughs at them in the Midrash, he says, you think that it's a big deal to take a stick and turn it into a snake? School kids, from their school, do it every day. I would imagine so. That's probably how they pledge allegiance every morning. They come to school and they take a staff and they do kishuf and he turns into a snake. Okay, so that's a double punch. That's the first sign that he shows to Moshe. That is the first sign that he shows to Bnei Israel, and that is the sign that he shows to Paro. What does it mean? You see in several sources what it means to be, sort of the way that Rashi the Midrash picks it up. A couple places that would be the case. Source 3. Lama haya hanachash keneged Moshe. The question is now what the Nachash meant to Moshe, which we'll get to in a second. What does that mean for Yisrael? Well, he turns into a Nachash, all right? And he thinks he's a big Nachash, but you can hit him with a stick, and he won't bite, and he's not going to be a Nachash, he's going to be a stick. The other Midrashim pick up the idea of both Paro and Moshe. Rashi combines the two, which very simply is, you, Moshe, Abdul Paro, you're like the Nachash. You are blaspheming. When you say that I'm the big snake that controls the world, okay, you are blaspheming, you're speaking against God, and you all know what happened to the Nachash, okay, that's what's going to happen to you. In the case of Moshe, you spoke and you said, Hein lo yaminu li, all right? So you did what the Nachash said, you spoke Lashon Hara, and you're going to get what he got. He got Sarat, what's going to happen? Okay, and that's what it means to Moshe, which is what this Midrash means. Moshe, what does it mean to Moshe? What does it mean to Bnei Israel? Rashi, of course, combines the two, and he brings the Midrash, and he says, you go tell what happened to you. You spoke Lashon Hara on them, and you got punished with Saras. When you tell that to them, you will have credibility because they know that Hashem watches out for them in that way. Rashi, of course, has to bring that Midrash for a very simple reason. In Pshuto Shel Mikra, that's in Dalet Aleph. V'yan Moshe v'yomer hein lo yaminu. He speaks Lashon Hara about them. V'lo yishmeu b'kolik yomri lo nirech elech Hashem. V'yomer elav ma ze b'yadecha. What do you have in your hand? V'yomer mateh. So he says, okay, throw it on the ground. Okay. Then he says, okay, put your hand inside. Tzarat. And then he says, okay, here's the third sign. When you get there, you throw some water in the ground and turn it to blood. Rashi says about the first one, it's a sign that you spoke Lashon Hara. You like the Nachash. Second one, it's a sign that you got punished just like you got punished with Sarat. And the third one means that he's going to start up with your God first. So Rashi has to bring the Midrash for a very simple reason. This is two questions. Number one, what was the first sign, okay, what if to practice it at home? Okay? What if to practice the first one? When you get there, you'll do it. What's the proof? Because the third one, he says, when you get there, you'll do it. So the question now in the text is, why does Moshe Rabbeinu have to try it out before he gets there, unless it has some kind of message for Moshe? Okay, just tell them like the third one. You'll get there. You'll throw a nachash on the ground, you throw a stick on the ground, you put your hand in, okay, and it'll be fine. Why does Moshe have to experience it? So Rashi has to bring the medrash, forced by the text. Okay, what is the significance? Okay, of the miracle of the nachash from Moshe, and when you give over that information over to them, you will have credibility with Bnei Israel. Fine. Okay, so you're just like the nachash. I don't know what a nachash is, but if you look in my second source, Vayishnei Marumim, okay, I don't know what a nachash is, but Uncle says it means, you have it?
Oh, fine.
Chivya. Okay, a chivya is a snake. Okay, so we have, you were like the nachash, and Paro's like the nachash, and you're just like the nachash, and you're just like the chivya. Forgot to tell you, there's a partner in crime with the chivya. Who was the partner in crime with the chivya? Oh, Chava. Oh, okay, that gets interesting. The original crime was the chivya and the Chava. Interesting. So we have all these ladies coming forward, and they're mialdas, I don't know what that means, but in Aramaic it means chayata. So I have a bunch of chayatas coming in front of the big chivya, okay, and they're not going along with what he said. Okay, been there, done that, right? It's not happening this time. You follow what I'm saying? They refuse to go along with whatever he says. Now, here's where I want to back up with the tai chis. You're with me so far, right? Okay. Okay. What was the first thing the Paro said? Hava, Yitzchak Mela. Okay. And the Chayas says, well, you can't do that because the Chayas, you know what Chayas means? That means they're Hakimim. Well, there's a celebrated joke in source 2. Reason that nobody ever gets the joke is because, unfortunately, all the Malamdim Paskin like Stephen Langton, and they end off Perek Beis as the chapter break, and they have a test on Perek Beis. Then the next day they get the test back, and they start Perek Gimel, and he didn't realize there was one parsha, Beis and Gimel, one slid into the other, where Shneim Hayu Arumim Atilayin, they're totally innocent. Okay, the next pasuk, opposing Vayihiyu, you have the other verb goes in the other direction, not Vayihu. The Nachash Hayah. Arum mikol chayat asadeh. Okay, what does Arum mean? He was more, the Unkelos, he was more hakim. That becomes interesting. Okay, you can't start up. In other words, this time, Chava, ladies, are not going along with the decree or the pitui or whatever of the big chivya. Ain't gonna happen this time. So that gets me back to tai chi. Let's go back to right? So I have to make tight sheets for the kids. I have to make translation sheets, right? So I have all the Ingelach over there and say, okay, we're making tight sheets. Okay, how do I tight up miyaldos ivriyos? I have to make a tight sheet. What should I write? You call it the miyaldos ivriyos. What's the tight miyaldos ivriyos? Help me out. Big hint. There's two, possibly three possible. Yeah.
So either the Jewish midwives,
okay,
or the midwives who help give birth.
Miyaldos of the other. Okay, either it's an adjective, okay, or it is two nouns, okay, or it's a possessive, or there's a genitive ambiguity, okay. By the way, how does Unkelos Paskin? Jewish. Yeah, it's the Chayat to the Jewish midwives. Now, the fact that, some kind of, Rabbi Yaakov writes in Amos Yaakov, there must be some kind of an ordinance anyways. I don't believe, okay, if I say that they're Yocheved and Miriam, in the way that the Midrashim say, there's still, that's not their names, but if their names are Shifra and Pua, it seems to be like some kind of local ordinance. You can't get a job in the government unless you have a pay resh or an ayin hay in your name. Okay? So, they got the job, but that's a rule. So there's two possible readings. Either they are Jewish midwives, largely that's approach of Chazal. Midrashim, they're not like that as a Barbanel, Shadal, in other words. All right? So I would add to that, there's a Midrash Tadsha that says that there were great Tzidkanios that Amdu Le'olam, and there were 5 to 7 Gayaros, Geras Tzedek, and they were Rachav, and they were Basparo, and Keturah, and Shifra, and Pua. That become, okay. So there are even in a medrash like that. So I'm working with the Yingelach, and I say we have to make tight sheets. How should we tight it up? Should we tight it up the Miyadish and Miyaldos, or should we tight it up the Miyaldos from the Yidness? Okay. So the kids say, well, that's very, very difficult because we're going to have a synchronic reading or a diachronic reading. So the other kids say, well, wait a second. How does that affect the deep structure? So the other says, wait a second. If you go with the Midrash Tadsha, okay, you're going to have to go with a syntagmatic multivalence. I say, you're right. Because the first time, now you're forced to read it. Okay? According to the, I really don't understand why nobody ever cites the other Brit. They argue, they bring that as a right. You see that they weren't Jewish. They're not like Chazal. Fine. How does that affect the reading right now? I could say the Yiddish and Miyaldis, the Miyaldis and the Yiddish, or if I go now with the Midrash Tadsha, I have to read it the first time is what? Miyaldis Ibrius means what? Before the Mizgayah. Okay. Then the proof text is Vatirena Telokim. That forces me to go back, okay, and read it consecutively with a new reading of the other one, which is Miyaldis, who are now, okay, Miyaldis who are now Ivrius, right? So then one of the kids said, yeah, but what difference does it make? And everyone tells them to be quiet. What do you mean what difference does it make? So one of the English says, on the level of deep structure, it makes absolutely no difference whatsoever. Why? Very, very simply. The text is multivalent. Clearly, we just showed it was. Okay, so it's multivalent. That's fine. If you hold like the first one, that they were Egyptians, is there any text in Shmos that says, although the men went along with the Gzeira, both the oppressors and the oppressed, that's clear, okay? And by the way, famously, the Ibn Ezra says, I don't believe there were just two ladies in charge of that's too many. He said, what?
There were sorrows.
There were sorrows. So that guy says now Sarim and Sarot. Okay? Do the Sarim go along with the Gzeira? Yeah. Okay? Do the Egyptian, the Jewish slaves go? Yeah, they go along with it. What about the sorrows? They don't go along with it. Is there any text at a level Pshutosh Mikra that says that Egyptian ladies do not go along with the decree? Lapara. Okay, that's about as Egyptian as you can get. She doesn't go along with the decree. Is there anything in the level of the text that says Jewish ladies do not go along with the decree?
Bas Levi.
Bas Levi and Bas Levi, okay? So any way you slice it, okay, it is absolutely, okay, true as the multivalence that this time, not the ladies, not the Egyptian ladies, not the Jewish ladies, not nobody, we are not going along with the chivya this time. All right? It's not going to happen. Been there, done that. That, okay, is now what's going to happen. That make sense? Okay. In others, it doesn't matter. Both the pshat and the pashtanim and the darshanim, they're onto something. Okay, a reversal of everything that happened up until now. Okay. That being the case, interesting things start to happen. So the multivalence over there, what I would call the redemption of Sefer Bereshit is, remember in the first Sefer, there was a Nachash, and as a result of that, we went into exile. Well, this time, it's going to be different. Okay, b'zchut nashim tzidkaniyot of whatever religious affiliation. Okay, yatzu avoteinu mitzrayim. Okay, that's not going to happen. That being the case, and the midrashim that pick up on it. The second one in source 2, Rashid Rabbah, Vayikra Adam Shem Ishto Chava. She picks up after this entire debacle with the chivya. Okay, Nitenet lo lachilto. She was given to him to give him life. U'miyatzato kechivya, and she gave him an eitzah like a chivya. It's really, really neat. If you have in source 4, this is later when they come before Paro, Parshat Va'era. It says Tula Lechem Mofet. Okay, give us a sign. You have to remember over there that give us a sign, when it says give us a mofet, it doesn't mean like the Yiddish word motifs. It's the same word. It doesn't mean show us a miracle. It means show us a, like you know, a mofet meaning a proof. Who's your rabbi? What is your authority? Can you show us what's the source of your authority? Are you in our league? So Miyad Yashlech Aaron et Mateo, but Sachak Paro Alem, he laughed at them. Moshe Aaron Matem Savorin. Batem Sachek Ale, Any Midyarei Midvaim Elo. Kol Mitzrayim Alek Shafim. Okay, Yesh Melachim Tevin Lefrat. What did he bring? Coals to Newcastle? Come on. Okay, Vaikra Paro. Okay, Vaikra Gam Paro. Okay, so what's Vaikra Gam Paro L'Chachamim Machshim? What's the Gam? Says the Midrash almost cryptically. Ella Vaikra Gam Paro Amar Levi Shekara Lishto. He called him the Rebbetzin. Take a look how they're laughing at me. And in the Shmos Rabbah version, she comes in and she replicates it on the spot. Like, what's the big deal? All right? What's the proof text? That he called in his wife. You see what it is? Gam Lisha. Chava also gave it to her husband. Okay? Afkan Vaikra Gam Para. Which is very, very beautiful because you're taking the first Gam in Sefer Shemot, and you're lining up with the first Gam in Sefer Bereshit, and you're picking up something that's between the lines on the text. Okay, the idea of this time. Okay, you've got the original sin of the Chivia, and the person even over here of Mrs. Paro, but in terms of the Mialdot Hevriyot or anybody else, that clearly is not going to happen. So. In terms of perspectives, you've got perspective of the Egyptians, what it simply means to them, in terms of their iconography, in terms of their control of the economy and of the Nile, showing a mofet, as we'll see, and the way the Midrash interprets that, what that means and what we think of that. From the perspective of the Jewish people, what that reading of the iconography means to them. From our reading, since we had the benefit of reading Sefer Bereshit, when we start to notice what the Midrash is starting to pick up within the text, what should we have noticed now that is completely different than the beginning of Sefer Bereshit? Which instead of the plunge into exile, is being reversed by ladies of whatever religious affiliation, which is changing now. All right? And I would say Shul Levinson's got all these theories about the Saper and the Siper, the implied teller, the implied text, the implied reader of the reader. What do we as readers see in all those different perspectives? Okay? And how do they come together? And how do the Midrashim play off of some of those? Okay, so there are Midrashim in which this starts to show up. But again, it goes back to implications that we should read about that in terms of things that we should have noticed in the text itself. Okay? Show you a couple examples. You have in source 5? Source 5 famously is Shmot Rabbah, and Midrashei Tov is a later Midrash. Watch what happens from the first one to the second one and how an idea develops and gets expanded. V'tar Yeshav Ben. Who's that? That's
Bat
Levi. Okay, Amar Yehuda Makish Leidata L'Horata. You're equating her birth with conception. All right? Mahorata Shelo B'tzar, Af Leidata Shelo B'tzar. Mikan L'Nashim Tzidkaniyot Shelo Hayu B'Pitkata Shel Chava. The equation means that there was no pain in birth whatsoever. And that teaches you that Nashim Sikanios were not part of the Gzeira Be'etzev Tel Dibanim of Chava. Specifically, who are we talking about over here in case of point? Even though we're expanding it to all Nashim Sikaniot, you're talking about Chava. And when you start to go through all the cases, it's really nice. And when you get to Hosea and you find out that the Eshit's Nunim over there, Gomer, she's also Avatar V'Tel. The equation locks in over there too. That becomes very, very fascinating. But over here, this Midrash is focusing on Yocheved. In the second source, what happens? So what the second Midrash do? Expanded it from the person of, archetypally of Yocheved. They've expanded it now to all of the Nashim Tzadkaniyot, Ki Chayot Heina. They're the reversal of that, okay? And none of them are B'Pitkat Shel Chava, okay? Beat that one. We finished that. We're out of it. The other thing, the last, it's really a Shalach Kodesh, and it's gorgeous. Gemara famously says like this: Levi and V'tar V'Telid. Where it says, "Afshar bat 130 shana havio v'kar bat." She's a bat. She's a bat Levi. She's 130 years old. What's the cheshbon, by the way? She's 130. You know what the cheshbon is? Where did they come the idea? Okay. If she was born ben achomot when they first went into Mitzrayim, okay, how long were they there? 210 years. All right. Moshe comes before Paro. How old is he? 80. So you subtract 80 from 210. She's no doubt ben achomot. That makes her 130. Okay. Somewhere says that she had a miracle, and she was like Sarah, and she replicates Sarah. Very nice. Midbar Rabbah, it's based on a pasuk. 130 shana shepiresh min ha'isha lebesof holid. Adam Arishon separated from his wife. Shnei Amar. Okay. They the first day on the job, sixth day on the job, they were punished with the chedek zadat. Okay. Vaychi Adam 30 u'mayat shana vayoled b'tmuto b'tzalmo vayikra et shmo Hashem. In other words, they don't have kids for 130 years. They've been separated from each other for 130 years. Read that back now to Yocheved. All right, they have been separated. Okay, Rashi brings a medrash. The medrash brings a medrash. How does Rashi know that it was the Kuchim Shneim that was married the second time? Where did he get that idea from? That it's not the first marriage, by the way. What?
Because it's the older siblings.
Yeah. It says, okay, Levi, he marries her, and they had a Vetelet Ben, and very nice, and he was in trouble, and his older brother and older sister came and took care. Where'd they come from? Okay, so in other words, there's an implied separation, okay, that they come back together to the tune of 130 years. Where have we seen that before? Okay, Shalach Kodesh picks up on it. I mean, it's gorgeous. Okay? Yocheved hayta bat kuf lamed shana, ki Yocheved tikun chava. Yeah?
But when Aaron and Miriam died,
Yeah.
right, in the midbar, they're in their 120s or so. It's not that long before Moshe Rabbeinu dies. They're not 130 years old.
Wait, a math challenge. Help me out over here.
So if the parents were separated for 130 years,
No.
You're only claiming that about
No, she'd be awful old by then. Okay.
Got it.
She gives birth when she's 130. That's one motif. There's motif that they, in the Midrash, and clearly in the context of Sukkot, they have been separated. Read it against the Midrash that they separated for 130 years, and he gives birth, okay, a second time at 130. Therefore, Chava equals, okay, Yocheved, new and approved.
Those are both their third child.
What's that?
Those are both their third child in this case.
Yeah, and the one that works.
Right.
Yeah, that's good. Right, this one's we're gonna keep this one. Kitofel. All right. All.
And shait is also like mishiti. I don't know.
I'm going to say, totally without looking, I'm sure if you look up Yalkut Riveni or something like that, they're going to tell you that he was the Gilgul of, okay? Because Moshe Rabbeinu and the Gilgul of Cain and Hevel, okay? I would sign on it unseen, okay? I'm going to go home, I'm going to open up a Yalkut Riveni and I'll let you know. I mean, for sure, okay? Yeah. All I'm saying is that the Midrash is picking up the equation of the Shimtzin Kaniyot in the person of Yocheved, which Midrashim are now willing to expand to all the Chayot, okay, the Chayatas, as a new way of dealing with this Tanim Hagadol. We're not going there. We're not listing, okay, which is going to change everything. We're going to go out of Galut. We're not going to go into Galut. So I mean, those would be a few cases where you start noticing that the pattern in the text of the Techayena. Neymar with Chayehem is the guys. Okay? They're willing to go along with it. I mean, both the oppressor and the oppressed. In terms of the ladies, it becomes very clear. However you want to tie up, Mialdot Evriyot, they're not going along with it. And there's an attack on that. Okay? And it comes back with a new decree. Kol ben Yelod Yor Tashlichu, v'kol bat Techayun. Okay? And of course, that doesn't last too long because nobody other than Bat Paro comes along and is Machaya the Ben actively herself. So it's literally Bat is Machaya the Ben. Okay, so that, in terms of how we would look at that, would be an idea that simply the Midrash is noticing things, that once you read the Midrash, you have to go back and look at the intertextuality of the text, both in terms of situation and in terms of language. All right? Once the implied reader reads that against everything what that means, in terms of what it means to Egyptian iconography, what it means in terms of the statement of a redemption of the first Sefer, it starts to be something that, okay, that's nice. The Midrashim noticed that we have to go back to the text itself and see what did we not notice that was over there. I want to flip to page to source 7, and there's another technique, methodology. I'm going to give it a name. Not T. Helfgott came up with this idea. I think we were starting to call it reversed intertextuality, midrashei. In other words, where it's not that you have a medrash that is working with a text, right? What's it doing? What's it noticing in the text? What's it playing with? What is it interpreting it? What's it saying? But sometimes you have reversed intertextualities where you have a text and a midrash. You have a text and a midrash. What happens when you flip it and you realize, okay, once you realize that it's a flipped midrash, all you have to do is notice that one text was really playing off of a different text, and he reversed it. Okay, he give you an example. Y'all know, but this is it's been everybody wrote about this. I'll give you an example. Yosef, the Megillah's Esther, being every other word is quoted from the Mice with Yosef, both in terms of situation, in terms of words. You have the Gemara and the Midrash, where okay, there's been a two servants of the king make a plot. It's nice. In Targum Yonason by the Sar Mashkim and Sar Ofim, it says they made a plot on his life. Okay, there's nothing about that by the Sar Mashkim and Sar Ofim. That's lifted straight from where? Okay, as a result of a sleepless night and a forgotten favor, as a result of that, there's a removal of a ring. Okay, and he's riding around on a horse. I mean, that clear textuality becomes very, very clear. In the Gemara, in the Midrash, he's before his rise to power, he takes Haman to the barbershop, and he puts him through a very embarrassing experience, and he has to be a barber, and he has to give him a haircut. Where is that in the Megillah? And the answer is, what? It's by Yosef. Okay? 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 All you did was you flip it, okay? Okay? And then you realize what the Midrash is doing is darshaning the other text, which it's playing off of, and you realize what it's saying about this text by reading it against the other one. All right? So, and the thing about the Sar Mashkim, Sarofim plotting on his life is the same exact thing. It's not over there, but when you flip it, then you notice the relationship between the two. So simply two examples that I brought over here. Number one example is that Vayomas Paroi doesn't mean that really died, and that he got Saras, well, it's kind of implied, and there's a proof text. Okay? Then you find Midrash Agadah, which is a later Midrash. Okay? So he says, Malakadosh Baruch Hu tafasti b'yadechem midat nachash hakadmoni sheotzi diba v'nilka b'tzarat. You are just like the Nachash HaKadmoni. He spoke Lashon Hara and he got Saras. Where in the world does it say that the Nachash got Saras? The answer is, it doesn't say it any place. It says that Moshe got Saras for speaking Lashon Hara. It says in another Midrash that Paro got Saras for what he did. All you do is flip the Midrashim. The other one is even more subtle. Bottom of Bereshit Rabbah Chaf and Bereshit Rabbah Yudchet. It's very clear. You don't need to even come onto the Midrash. Tava bikash la'arog et adam lisat Chava, that he had intentions upon Chava, minitavela. You have this very, very cryptic Midrash. I think Torah Shalem goes on for pages. He said, I'm trying to find a source for it. I don't see this anyplace. I don't see anything. Okay, below the Me'aldot didn't do kasher diber aleihem, ela melamed shetavan b'dvar ve'ira v'lo ratzo. They're trying to figure out how do you darshan from the words asher diber aleihem. That means that Paro was tovea the Me'aldot of the dvar ve'ira. They didn't listen. It was much more nefarious than whatever. Where's that? The answer is
by the snake.
By the snake.
Yeah.
All you do is you flip the Midrashim, and you see exactly where the Midrashim are going. Okay? The Nachash has Saras, because Paro has Saras, so they're interchangeable. Okay? The the Nachash was Tovel L'Dvar V'Ras. That means the Paro. All you have to do, once you see that that's happening, you notice the identity. That's one thing. I want to back up simply on this idea in source 6. And here you have to combine the iconography with what the Midrash is doing. And then when you read it, you say, oh my gosh, why didn't we notice that? Okay? Now is this. It is in source, in Vav, in 6, you have the thing over there when he calls the kids from the school. And they replicate it. She was able to do it. The Gamo, it's not as well spelled out as it is in the Tanchuma version, where exactly the proof text is made, but it's Gam L'Rabbo. Okay, the Mrs. Parker can do it too. Watch what happens now. Zayin. Mahu vayivla mateh Aaron et mateh. What's the scene over there? Hashem says, when Paro will say, Tnu lechem mofet, he's going to ask for a motifs. Not a miracle, he has to show a sign of authority. What is your sign of authority? Can you do in Kishu for some other method to show that we should talk to you? So they come in there, and they throw it on the ground, and it turns into, they take the matem, turns into Nachash, and everybody falls down laughing. I say, are you kidding? Call Mrs. Paro, call the kids from the school. Okay? The whole thing backfires. Everyone's laughing. They're laughing, and it's embarrassing. Okay? Then what happens? Then, Vayivla mateh Aaron et matotam. What happens then? When it goes back to being a mateh, what does mateh mean in the Egyptian iconography? Authority. What does Nachash mean? I control the economy. Okay? I have the divinity of the Nile as my patroness. I control everything. The sign of the mateh, of authority, swallows up their, in one version, the Nachashim, the other version, their matah. Okay? My sign of authority can swallow up your sign of authority. Okay? Nes b'toch nes. Rashi doesn't bring that because according to Rashi, that's not the point. It's not about a moifis, it's not about a nes, it's about a show of authority. Okay? Melamed shechazar hamateh, mateh kibriyato v'le'ata. It's not a nachash that swallowed up all the other nachashes, you know, anybody can do that. It's the mateh and they know what it means. Alright? What happens next in the psukim? Because Baruch Hu, it says over there, Hashem was makshe le'paro le'chazek, and which means what? He's not laughing anymore. That hit home, right? Because Baruch Hu is mechazekim, okay, and he stomps out of the room and says, "I don't care. What happened?" He understands what it means that the mateh swallowed the mateh. Kesharab Paro came tamav amar umayim yomar lemateh balei tell the mateh swallow Paro b'kisao and his authority. Shavu bolei otam. So he'll listen to it. Rav Yossi bar Chanina nes gadol na'aseh b'mateh was a big moifus. She'af al pichen. Okay. She'af al pi. She'bala kol otan hamatot. It swallowed up all those matot. She'shlichu. Shahayu rabim lasot mehen yud omarim. There was all these staffs. Lo hava, and it didn't get one big thicker. It stayed as skinny as it ever was. End of Midrash. Whoa. Paro gets quiet in the room, and he says, "That's not funny." And he's storming out of the room. Where's the Midrash from? Yosef. Okay? That's not funny. The Midrash basically says, you did notice, didn't you? Did? Take a look at the dreams of Paro. Okay? Vayikra gam Paro l'chachamim l'achshim v'yasu gam heim chatumei Mitzrayim. Vayishlichu ish mateo vayu l'tanim vayivla mateo. Okay? At matatam. Go back to the dreams. Vativlena hashibolim edakot et sheva hashibot. They swallowed it up. Abriot v'amliot vayikat Paro v'nechalok. Vayibaboker v'tipayim l'chov v'nishlach. Vayikra et kol. Here they are. Kol chatumei Mitzrayim et kol chachameha. Right? It's word for word lifted out of there. The Midrash says, you did notice that, did you? No, I can't say you did, but okay. Okay, he explains what it is. Tovana el kirbena v'lo noda ki ba'u el kirbena. Paro says, that's not funny. Once you notice, which the Midrash establishes the creation, the connection between the two, what was the dreams by Yosef? you've got the Chachamim, you've got the Khartoumei Mitzrayim, okay? The results, by the way, when he comes in and he interprets everything, okay? Yosef walks in the next day, and theologically, Nebuch, what Paro has gone through, he has a dream in which he is Omida Aliyah Or, and you have all the rivers, the source of hunger, and the parot come out of, okay, so you've got his entire religions in there. You've got him, you've got the cows, you've got the river, okay, that's his entire theology, it gets all swallowed up. Kid walks in the next day and says, Hello, Pitronim, Elokim, everything's from Elokim, he goes to 5 times Elokim. Paro starts talking about them, and the Chachamim can't do it, okay, and everybody says it's from Elokim, okay? What happens eventually by the Khartoumim when they can't replicate it? Etzba Elokim. You start to notice that, okay? You notice that something happened over here that's not funny. And I'll flip it like this. First of all, you see the connection that's replicating itself. The dreams now are coming true. It's a Meshech Chochmah like this. It's a murder Meshech Chochmah. In the text only appears by the cows. It does not appear by the grain. Okay? Okay, it doesn't say that the grain swallowed up all the grain. It's only by the cows. All right? Now, depends where you want to go with it. Classically, the Gush folks, Jonathan Grossman, Meir Spiegelman, said that is the solution to, that's the Eitzah, it's the solution to the dream. In other words, you have in front of you 2 possibilities. You have in front of you, you have a possibility of lo nodaki b'kir bena. You have a possibility where there's grain and it's not true that lo nodaki b'kir bena. You pick the one that you want. That's what the dream is offering you, those 2 options. Which one do you like? Right? It's a set of options. In other words, the Eitzah is part of the dream. Lubavitcher Rebbe learns it very, very deep. Lubavitcher Rebbe says the Eitzah, by the way, is very, very simple. What the dream means, everybody figured out. Okay? 7 times gains coming up, that's 7 years. 7 cows, 7 plowings, that's very obvious. Okay? That the dream means what it means and has no symbolic function is obvious to everybody. What do you do with the fact that at one point in the dream, how many cows is Paro looking at? The Tamod Ma'etzel, okay? The fat cows, the skinny cows are standing next to the fat cows. How many cows is he looking at?
14.
What? 14. 14. That is the mystery. Okay? Everything else you could explain away. Okay? And if you come in and say, well, Sheva Banis HaTamayli, Sheva Banis HaTakayfer, okay, you're out of here. Okay? If a kid comes in and is taking his life in his hand, the kid just got out of jail and starts telling him how to run his economy, that doesn't make any sense. He says what the dream means is you are now looking at the specter of 14 years. You now know what is going to happen. Those are your options. Okay, the options are built into the dreams. All the other elements, he says that there's no symbolism in the dream. It means what it means. However, if you know, have in front of you all 14 years with 2 sets of options, what are you going to do? That's what the dream means. Paro says, you're brilliant. Meshech Chochmah has a reading like this. Only appears by the cows, doesn't appear by the grain. He says very simply, why do the 2 dreams replicate themselves? Why do they happen 2 in a row? Yosef said very simple reason. Why? Is there any new information that's not in the second dream? That's not. What did Yosef say was the dream? Yeah. Well, the meaning of the fact that the dream happened twice. What? Because it can happen very, very, very fast. Says the Meshech Chochmah, that means if one detail, not the entire dream, does not repeat itself, that means that that detail is not going to happen very fast. Okay? In other words, the entire thing is going to happen very, very fast. But if it's repeated to say, there's an urgency, it's going to happen very fast. But a detail doesn't repeat itself, that means that detail is not going to happen very fast. The details of everything is going to totally empty out. It's going to be completely empty out. Okay, the huge economy that was brought into Egypt is now completely going to be emptied out. Is not going to happen for another 210 years. That doesn't happen now. Okay, that's how we explain it. Okay, that is not going to happen very fast. It will happen eventually, but not now. Paro is all too aware of that Meshech Chochmah, and he says, that's not funny. If you want to replicate my motifs and I control the Nile, okay, you're going to come back and say, yeah, time's up. And now, that which was in the dreams, which are replicating themselves in the text, in the situation, and exactly is that way, okay, which the Midrash writes, very shorthand, that this thick is totally not any thicker whatsoever. You're telling me the time's up and it's going to be kasher lo nada b'kirbena? That's not funny. You go stomping out of the room, and the Kodesh Baruch Hu has to be mechazeket libo, because there is a turning point at that point. At that point, they're going to come to a point they're going to say, back like the Khartoumim over there, they're going to say, it's Etzba Elokim, everything's going to be a change. So that would be an example, I would say simply, where you have an element that's in the text. When you start to read the Midrash, and what the Midrash says, this descriptive statement, you could go with that statement, but now you've got to go back and say, you did notice that the scene and the text and the implications are identical. What is that supposed to mean? Once you read that and the implications in the text, you start to understand the text completely different. It doesn't mean that you have to apply the method of the Midrash to the method of the Pshat, but it would be absurd not to notice what the Midrash noticed, a gap that was set up there on purpose. Okay, so it's not only filling a gap, but it's filling a gap that is waiting for the reader to supply and survive and to define by any other method that it possibly could, that will deal with the situation that everything's going to be. As it turns out, the ending was very, very happy. We went to Mitzrayim, was good, okay? But simply in terms of the turning point of what the Miel Dot did from the beginning of the Sefer and the Shin Sitkin up and whatever, and the reversal of Sefer Bereshit is something that you have to look at the Midrashim so that you can appreciate how that works on the level of Pshat. Thank you.
Wow.